This is the Tom Bigby Tales, and I'm your host, Shannon Evans. I write about a small town in northeast Mississippi on the Tombigbee River, and sometimes I write about the rest of the state. This episode is about the Amzi Love Home, a lovely antebellum home in Columbus, Mississippi. Chester, South Carolina native David Love moved to Columbus with his wife Clorinda Neely Love and 5 children in about 1830. He owned significant property along both sides of the Tombigbee River in Noxubee County and in what was then Monroe County, Mississippi, and is now Lowndes County. He even owned some land into Pickens County, Alabama, along with his brothers Drennan and Aaron Love. Drennan would settle near Crawford, Mississippi, and raise 9 sons on his large land holdings. Aaron would just get settled in Pickens County, Alabama, before dying in 1818. Their father, James Love, and his wife, Jane Lockhart Love, both Quakers, had died in 1810 or thereabouts in South Carolina. David and Clorinda Love moved to Columbus with their children, Thomas Neely, Clarissa Eveline, Amaziah, Amzi, or as his family called him when he was little, Renzi Ellis, Albert Ira, Harriet Louisa, and Angeline Minerva Love. The youngest, Eliza Larissa, was born in Hardeman County, Tennessee in 1832 for some unknown reason. The family lived in a home on what is today 7th Street South, some walking distance to Franklin Academy, the first free public school for white children in the state that was established in Columbus in 1921. The home they lived in was a very modest home, and it would be down the street from what is today the Amzi Love Home. The eldest child, Thomas, would become a doctor, and he married Eliza James Cannon, who would serve as a surgeon for the 2nd Mississippi Infantry during the Mexican War. Eliza, their daughter, would marry Nathan Fox, a Cumberland Presbyterian minister, and move to Brooksville, Mississippi. David's daughter, Clarissa Eveline, married Elihu, and I'm sure I'm butchering that name, Elihu Bay Gaston of Chester, South Carolina. They got married in Columbus in 1936, where they would make their home. Harriet Louisa would marry Griffin Theobald, a home builder from Kentucky, who would serve in the state legislature. And he would also serve in the Civil War and rise to the rank of captain in the Confederate States Army. And they would eventually make their home in Theobald's home state of Kentucky. Amaziah, who, as I said, his family called Renzi, was born in 1822 in Chester, South Carolina, and he arrived in Columbus before age 10. He would later attend the University of Alabama and become an attorney and elected circuit clerk of Columbus, first in 1847, again in 1851, and then for a final term in 1857. Amzi, or Renzi, or Amaziah, depending on which word you want to use, I'm going to call him Amzi Love from now on. He married Edith Wallace from Brickville, Alabama in 1848. And as a surprise wedding present to his new bride, he built what is now the Amzi Love Home. When she was in Columbus visiting his family before the wedding, she saw the grand home being built down the street and asked whose it was. Amzi did not want to spoil the surprise and told her, "Oh, it's for my mother. She always wanted a bigger house." And he continued the ruse until their wedding day. After the wedding, he brought his new bride home to her beautiful new home, and it would be there that they would raise their family. The home remains in the Amzi Love family to the present, where a 5th-generation descendant, Sid Carradine, lives in it today. Amzi would join the law firm of Dickinson, Iron, and Love, where he would practice law for the rest of his life, except during the Civil War. During the American Civil War, Amzi would be mustered in as a major in the Confederate Quartermaster Corps for the 4th Regiment, 4th Brigade of the Mississippi Infantry. Amzi and Edith would raise a house full of children in their new home. Alice, David, who only lived 21 days, Clara, Mary, Otis, who sadly only lived 10 months, Annie, and Amzi Ellis Jr. were all raised in this home. Amzi's wife, Edith, would unfortunately contract yellow fever in a deadly outbreak that ravaged the southeastern U.S. in 1874. The high humidity and summer heat was a breeding ground for disease-carrying mosquitoes, especially along the Mississippi River, the Tombigbee River, and the Mississippi/Alabama-Louisiana Gulf Coast. The mortality rate was high as few, if any, medicines were available to treat the disease. Many people succumbed to the disease in the summer and fall of 1874, including Edith Wallace Love. She was buried in Friendship Cemetery. Distraught, Amzi was at a loss of what to do with a house full of children and the love of his life gone. His law firm had a sizable office in Memphis that specialized in estates and properties. Amzi's law partners and his older daughters encouraged him to go to Memphis and tackle some of the caseload there to distract him from his grief. Off to Memphis he went in the midst of the yellow fever outbreak and Reconstruction, and worked long hours helping families untangle complicated probated wills and contracting yellow fever in the process. He hid his illness from his family as long as possible. His 2 eldest daughters were dispatched to Memphis to care for their papa when it was finally discovered that he was ill, and they would try and nurse him back to health. Unfortunately, he died at the age of 54 in Memphis, leaving 6 orphans ranging from age 4 to 19, all virtually destitute, with their father, the only bread earner, gone. The children, while they inherited their father's estate, were told by the Reconstruction provost that they could not keep the house and would have to be sold unless the children could produce a $5,000 bond to satisfy a bond required for the property. The girls did everything they could to raise the money for the bond. They sewed, they took in ironing, they opened rooms to board widows, etc., and they managed to scrape up the $5,000 bond, which they promptly framed and put on the wall where it hangs to this day. The children remained in the house until they married or died, with the home passing from one family member to the next. With so much connection to the past, it's not surprising that there are spirits wandering around this particular property. Several people have reported over years seeing a woman in a long powder blue dress with indistinct facial features come through the unopened back door of the Love Home and walk across the yard into the front yard of the Lincoln Home, directly behind the Love Home. There she sometimes ascends the stairs and disappears on their front porch. Well, one spring day, while sitting on the front porch floor of the Lincoln Home playing Barbies with the child I was babysitting, I watched a woman approach across the yard from the Love Home. She was below me where I sat on the raised porch. I thought it was Miss Mary Elizabeth next door, getting the house ready for the annual spring pilgrimage of homes. The woman paused to look back over her shoulder toward her home, the Amzi Love House, gathered her skirts, and continued toward the bottom of the steps of the Lincoln Home. I got up off the floor and went to the railing to greet her. But it wasn't Miss Mary Elizabeth. I didn't recognize the lady in the blue dress, so I called down to her. "May I help you?" She put an old-fashioned gloved hand on the railing and climbed the stairs. "Ma'am, can I help you?" No answer. She continued up the stairs, and as she drew closer, I realized I could see through her hand to the railing beneath it. Did not immediately register with me that she was a spirit, not a person in its full entirety, until she walked across the porch, rang the bell, and then walked through the front door of the house without opening the door. I, of course, opened the front door behind the woman to see, what was there, but of course there was no one there. But I already knew there wouldn't be anyone there. So I just shook my head and went back to playing Barbies with my little friend. It was just another ghostly visitor in Columbus on yet another lazy, hazy summer afternoon. Thank you for coming with me on my tour of Columbus, Mississippi and the Tombigbee Tales. Until next time.